2140. The 25x versus 33x retirement rule. When enough isn't enough. Imagine the absolute worst-case scenario. It's not dying at your desk at 65. It's retiring at 40, feeling like a genius, then running out of money at 75. Picture being too old to work, your skills completely obsolete, staring at a bank balance that just hit zero, because you followed a rule written 30 years ago. There's a terrifying, quiet crisis happening right now in the financial independence community. Millions of people are blindly chasing a specific number, convinced that once they hit it, they're safe forever. They submit resignation letters, they pop champagne, they walk away. But here's the brutal truth nobody wants to discuss. The math that promised them freedom has a failure rate. And if you fall into that failure rate, you don't just lose your lifestyle, you lose your dignity. The difference between running out of money and having infinite security isn't luck. It comes down to two multipliers, 25x and 33x. I'm Boris, and today we're putting the 4% rule on trial. We're examining why the 25x standard might be a trap in today's economic reality, and why the 33x rule might be the only thing that lets you actually sleep at night. This isn't just about spreadsheets. It's about making sure you never have to greet customers at Walmart when you're 80. The seductive danger of the 25x rule. Here's what makes the 25x rule so appealing. It feels achievable. The premise, based on the famous Trinity study, is elegantly simple. Take your annual spending, multiply by 25, and that's your freedom number. If you spend $50,000 yearly, you need $1.25 million invested. The theory says you can withdraw 4% of that portfolio annually, adjust for inflation, and you'll likely not run out of money for 30 years. But notice the critical detail I just mentioned, 30 years. If you retire at 65, 30 years carries you to 95. You're dead or close to it. The math works perfectly. But if you're watching this channel, you probably don't want to retire at 65. You want to retire at 40, maybe 35. If you retire at 35, you don't need money lasting 30 years. You need it lasting 60 years. This is where the 25x rule starts cracking apart. The Trinity study showed 95% success rates over 30 years. But over 50 or 60 years, that success rate plummets. With the volatility we've experienced, inflation spikes, market corrections, relying on a model with a 10% failure rate means playing Russian roulette with your life. You might think, okay, so just save a little more. But we're not discussing a little more. We're discussing the 33x rule. The 33x alternative, safety at a steep price. This is the counter-argument to standard advice. Instead of a 4% withdrawal rate, you drop to 3%. Mathematically, 1 divided by 0.03 equals 33.3. So you need 33 times your annual expenses. Let's return to our example of someone spending $50,000 yearly. Under the 25x rule, they needed $1.25 million. Under the 33x rule, they need $1.65 million. That's a $400,000 difference. For the average high earner saving $40,000 annually, that's not just more money, that's 10 additional years of working, 10 more years of commutes, 10 more years of office politics, 10 more years of missing your kids growing up. This is the central conflict of modern finance. Do you risk running out of money 25 times, or do you risk wasting your life working for safety you didn't need 33 times? Sequence of returns risk, the silent killer. Let's examine why the 25x rule is so dangerous specifically right now. It ignores something called sequence of returns risk, the financial equivalent of getting punched in the face the second you walk out the door. If you retire with $1.25 million and the market crashes 20% the very next year, like we saw in 2022, your portfolio drops to $1 million, but you still need to withdraw your $50,000 to live. Now your portfolio sits at $950,000. You're cannibalizing your principal. Even if the market roars back the following year, you have less money working for you to capture that recovery. You dug a hole so deep, you can't climb out. The 25x rule assumes average returns, But nobody lives an average life. We live in specific, volatile timelines. If you retire into a recession with only 25x, you're statistically likely to fail. The 33x rule, however, is a tank. It's built to absorb that punch. If you have $1.65 million and the market drops 20%, you still have $1.3 million, still above that critical survival threshold. 33x isn't about buying yachts, it's about buying sequence of returns insurance. The psychological cost, one more year syndrome. However, and this is where it gets genuinely interesting, there's a massive psychological cost to the 33x rule that safety-obsessed advisors ignore. It's called one more year syndrome. I witness this constantly. Someone hits their 25x number. They have enough, but they're scared. They say, I'll just work one more year to reach 27x. Then they arrive there and the goalpost shifts to 30x, then 33x. They become dragons hoarding gold, terrified to leave the cave. The math of 33x is safer, absolutely, but the utility of that extra money diminishes rapidly. If you're 50 years old and keep working until 55 to hit 33x, you've traded 5 of your healthiest, most mobile years for a slightly thicker safety cushion. You can always earn more money, but you can never buy back ages 50 through 55. There's grim irony in being the richest person in the graveyard. The 33x rule protects you from poverty, but exposes you to the risk of having wasted your life accumulating numbers on a screen that you never actually needed. The dynamic guardrail strategy. So how do we solve this? Because obviously neither extreme is perfect. The solution lies in realizing that retirement isn't a binary light switch anymore. It's a dimmer switch. The mistake most people make is assuming they'll spend the exact same amount yearly, adjusted perfectly for inflation, regardless of market conditions. That's robot thinking, not human thinking. The smartest approach is what I call the dynamic guardrail strategy. You aim for 25 times as your quit the job I hate number. Once you hit 25 times, you're technically free. You leave the high-stress corporate position. But instead of sitting on a beach doing nothing, you coast. You earn a modest amount of active income, maybe covering half your expenses, while your portfolio grows in the background. This bridges the gap between 25x and 33x without requiring you to stay in the cubicle. You let compound interest do the heavy lifting to move you from lean fire to fat fire while you're already enjoying life. The flexibility factor. Here's what most people don't realize about the expenses side of this equation. The 25x rule assumes your spending is rigid, but in reality, spending is flexible. If the market tanks 20%, are you really taking that $10,000 vacation to Italy? No. You're staying home, cooking your own meals, and cutting your budget by 10 to 15% for a year or two. This flexibility factor is what saves the 25x rule from failure. If you're willing to tighten your belt during downturns, 25x is plenty. If you want complete inflexibility, if you want to spend like royalty regardless of whether the economy's burning, then you need 33x. You're paying for the luxury of not having to budget. The 33x number is the price of rigidity. The 25x number is the reward for flexibility. The healthcare wildcard. There's also a hidden variable that is surfaced aggressively: the cost of healthcare and longevity. People are living longer, but they're living longer with chronic conditions. The 25x rule often underestimates the explosion in costs that happens in the final 5 years of life. Assisted living, specialized care, these are wealth destroyers. The 33x proponents argue that the extra buffer isn't for your lifestyle today. It's for your nursing home in 40 years. And they have a point. If you retire with the bare minimum, you're betting on your own good health. That's a risky wager. 33x allows you to self-insure against the unknowns of the human body. It's the difference between a state-run facility and a private room with a view. It sounds morbid, but financial planning is ultimately about planning for the decay of your own body. Personality matters. Optimizer versus pessimist. Ultimately, the battle between 25x and 33x comes down to your personality type. Are you an optimizer or a pessimist? If you're an optimizer, 25x is sufficient because you know that if things deteriorate, you can pick up consulting work. You can reduce costs. You can adapt. You trust your own agency. If you're a pessimist, if you carry high anxiety, 25x will feel like a prison. You'll check your portfolio daily. A 1% drop will ruin your week. For that person, the extra years of work to reach 33x aren't wasted. They're the price of mental peace. You aren't buying money, you're buying the ability to ignore stock market news. The actionable play. So what's the actionable strategy here? Don't blindly aim for a number because a blog post commanded it. Run your own simulation. Examine your spending. How much is discretionary? If 50% of your spending is discretionary money you can cut instantly, 25x is incredibly safe. If 90% of your spending is fixed costs like mortgage and insurance, 25x is a ticking time bomb, and you need to push for 33x. And remember, the goal isn't the number. The goal is the life the number supports. Don't become so obsessed with the math of the future that you forget to live in the present. Your decision. If you're sitting there with the spreadsheet open trying to decide if you can walk away, drop a comment below with your number. Are you team 25x or team 33x? I want to see where the community stands. And if this video helped you clarify the fuzzy math of freedom, share it with your FIRE
group or your partner. We need to stop searching for magic numbers and start building resilient lives.
Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.